Hello and welcome back to KeyDigital's Compass Control online training. This is level C1 part 5, your first Compass Control project. Everything we've discussed so far has introduced you to the system, given you an understanding of what the system is, and by golly, you've sold your first Compass Control project. So congratulations. What are the next steps here? What is the checklist to go over for your first Compass Control project? Well, we've always gone into this slide immediately after saying hello, right? We've gone into this slide, and the reason we return to this slide each and every presentation, C1 Part 1, C1 Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, and now Part 5, is because this diagram says it all. The full circle of connectivity, as we've talked about, the audio, video, all of these parts. Well, now, when it comes to your first Compass Control project, you should be referring to a system design schematic similar to this. Perhaps many audio, video components. How are those things wired into and out of your matrix switchers? Because the programmer needs to program that to know that this is output 1, output 2, output 3, output 4, because those are all different commands, aren't they? Not only the audio video components, but how do the peripheral components, your automation and integration devices, how do all of these third-party components connect into the system? Not just inputs and outputs and zones and whatnot, but what IR or RS-232 port of your master controller are we using to control these devices through the Compass Control system? So it's very important that you refer to that system design, and we'll visit that. And one of the first things I always recommend folks who are just getting started with Compass Control, I encourage them to draw out their first GUI. Draw it on paper, okay? You got to determine what is that GUI. Is it going to be custom or is it going to be modular? And then in that GUI, what devices are you using? You should know by now. You've sold the system. You know what you're controlling. And you need to make sure that those libraries or the code sets are available in the Compass Control software suite, or modules if you're going to be using a modular project. Okay? So we'll confirm and create libraries or modules. Then you need to worry about on-site. Your system design schematic is your map for all of your connectivity, right? But how about your network coverage? Okay? Then, after having, or maybe in no specific order, but maybe before, maybe after, having these items checked, begin your programming. It's really, really important to get your hands on going, get your hands dirty in our software. There is no substitution. As one person once told me, programming is not a spectator sport. You're going to learn so much, and I will be 100% honest. There is a significant learning curve with Compass Control if you're doing a C3, a custom project especially. So you need to get over that hump. Whether that means programming your own system for your own home or your own office, or just giving yourself plenty of time for that first Compass Control project, begin that programming as soon as you can. Maybe even just trying to program a concept that you have. And then, of course, very, very important, in our sales people here at KeyDigital will be so happy that I included this, of course, ordering KeyDigital equipment, right? Not only so that you have it when you're ready on site, but so you can do proper testing in your facility. That's so important. Please don't be somebody who just shows up on site even without doing your programming. That has happened before, okay? Please don't be a person like that. Make sure you take the proper preparation steps, and that's what C1 Part 5, your first Compass Control system, is all about. So how do you want your GUI to look? Do you want to go with a custom system or a modular system? As you can see, they both can look fantastic. The modular is prefixed, right? The modular is more designed for single zone application, like a home theater, like a media room, like master bedroom kind of thing. Custom system is for those of you who really enjoy the nuts and bolts of this, for creating your own logic and being in charge of that logic, for making that iPad your own custom palette as Compass Control enables you to do. So if we're going to explore the custom GUI build, again, as I mentioned earlier, get to the drawing board. This could be on a napkin or on scratch paper. That's how I did my first Compass Control interface. In fact, I said, you know what? I've been on to a number of sites. I've done a number of team viewer sessions. In my experience, I know how a number of these GUIs look. In this specific application I chose was like a courtroom, actually. And I built my own GUI from scratch based on that drawing that I made, those drawings that I made. Another thing we do here at KeyDigital is we will just pull up screenshots of the various iPads we've constructed here, or maybe that you, the installers and programmers, have constructed. We'll pull up screenshots and we'll just crop a certain section of the page and throw that onto a blank template somewhere in a PowerPoint file, for example. And we'll use a blank iPad, a blank iPod Touch, and we'll drag those elements onto it. So do you want it to look super simple? Do you want it to be something extremely clever and unique? This is all up to you when you go to do a custom GUI. Or, of course, also still custom, we have the pre-built templates that are available for you to download as you have your C3 certification, okay? You gotta be C3 certified to do this. C3 certification is achieved, as I mentioned before, when you actually submit your project to us. And it doesn't have to be advanced. It doesn't have to be something that takes you 2 months to build. Just show us some basic understanding of how you use our element types. We'll grant you C3 certification, because to us, it's more about opening up a dialogue and working with you. So the C3, the pre-built templates are really useful though, because maybe you have this great idea, but maybe your job is 3 weeks from now and you really just need to get something going right away. Well, you look through our website on the pre-built templates Compass Control page and hey, what do you know? We have something that looks a lot like what you're trying to do. And we would definitely still consider that to be C3, or excuse me, to be custom, because then you're gonna be tweaking those and making that your own. Another thing to consider with custom is the aspect ratio, portrait or landscape. There are 3 aspect ratios we support: iPad, the iPhone and iPod 4, and the iPhone and iPod 5 aspect ratios as well, where the 5 is a little taller than the 4. So it's just some ideas of how you first get started and then get your hands on it. Now that's the GUI, but also you need to check out our libraries with your project. You don't want to be, again, show up on site and say, oh, they don't even have this code set. Because let me tell you something. We have near approaching right now 100,000 code sets in the Compass Control libraries. That's a lot. But then, you know, I met a guy at a recent Infocom who said, well, I work with a different control system and they have 250,000 codes inside. Well, you know, and then he said, but it doesn't matter. Every single job, there's always something that I need to either manipulate, edit the code set, or create my own codes, learning the IR remote and that sort of thing. So in order to do that, to know how to learn the IR remote, create the RS-232, create the TCP/IP code sets, or edit what we give you, jump into those C2 videos. C2 training videos teach you everything about managing, as the managers, the software is called, managing your libraries. And if you ever wanted to just take a quick look at our library, you could open up the respective IR, RS-232, TCP/IP manager, and do an open of our library, which is in our default download directory, our default install directory. C, program files, KeyDigital, Compass Control, and then you have library. Or if your computer is better than mine, C, program files, x86, KeyDigital, Compass Control, library. That's where they are all stored. Finally, with your custom build GUI, Do you need a bidirectional driver? Well, bidirectional drivers are necessary if it's a device that's controllable elsewhere as well, not just through the compass system, but maybe on the wall, the lighting system is controllable. Okay, in that case, you want to have a bidirectional driver for the part so that you can, if the system is manipulated through that external wall control, that status can be reflected in the iOS device. That's when a bidirectional driver is necessary. Now, we have bidirectional drivers located on our webpage. They require C3 certification credentials to download. Okay, so another reason to go through the C3. Remember, we talked about that before. But if you don't see what you need, you can request a driver by emailing tech@keydigital.com. Now, I'll be 100% honest with you. We need a good amount of advance notice. We also need to have hardware on hand if it's something that we don't have a driver for and we need to create, because bidirectional is really a lot of fine-tuning at first. Not just coding, but fine-tuning. What is the delays that we need? What works well with this device? So we really need to have it on hand to test with. So when you send the email to tech@keydigital.com, you should probably just go ahead and include your contact at said manufacturer so that we could reach out to them, hopefully start a Compass Alliance partnership as well. And you can request it, but this information here is in no way, shape, or form a guarantee that we'll make every bidirectional driver that is requested. So just to be clear here, we do take requests, and hopefully we'll be able to get to all of them, but we need plenty of advance notice, and not all drivers are going to be made. We'll let you know, of course, when you submit that request. How about the modular GUI? Well, confirm modules. Now, modules are classified two different ways, or maybe I should say three different ways in our module library. Some modules will begin with the letters ZRC. It means that it's a module that applies just to the handheld remote. Now, modules, the ZRC 300, you can import modules into it. Of course, you could also just import standard IR one-way code set libraries as well. When do you go with a module instead? Well, maybe you have something a little out of the normal box of what you see on this handheld remote. For example, if you have a 4x1 switcher, it's not automatically going to drop that 4x1 library onto the remote and know that input 1 should be on the A, input 2 should be on the B button, input 3 should be on the C button, and input D should be on the D button. So the devices outside of the cable box, Blu-ray player, television type remotes, the standard consumer devices, those probably have, you'll definitely want to check the module library to see if it is in there for your device. And if it is beginning with ZRC, then it is strictly the Zigbee remote control. If it begins with iOS, then it is strictly iOS, but it is all three aspect ratios, the iPad, iPhone 5, and iPhone 4, all three covered. However, if there's no specifying name at the beginning, or specifying prefix at the beginning of the name, no ZRC at the beginning of the module name, no iOS at the beginning of the module name, then that means it covers all the devices. The handheld remote, the iPad, the iPod 5, and the iPod 4, all covered. Now, to create a new module from scratch, that's something that's in the C2 training videos as well. Or editing existing modules, whether it be a ZRC module, iOS module, or obviously both, we're going to teach you later in this C1 presentation. So creating or editing a ZRC module is going to be part of C1 Part 7 as you continue your viewing. And edit existing iOS modules is part of C1 Part 9. And again, creating a new iOS module, that's going to be C2. Okay? So you'll continue watching. This is really what? This is your first Compass Control project. This is a checklist of things, and we're referring you where to go for to make sure you have all of your bases covered for your first Compass Control project. So site preparations, what should you know about the site? Well, refer to your design schematic, okay? Refer to that. And make sure you begin to get more detailed before the installation comes. Now this is probably nothing new to many of you guys. It's very important that the design specifies connectivity, of course. Otherwise, the programmer might say, well, I assume that cable box is input 1, Blu-ray player is input 2, and Apple TV is input 3. However, the installer says, oh, Apple TV starts with A, so that's first. Blu-ray player starts with B, so that's second. And cable box, it starts with C, so alphabetically that should be third. You don't want to get into that kind of situation. It's kind of a funny thing being a programmer. In the field, they might request you make one move of connection, and an installer in the field, a technician in the field might say, okay, piece of cake. Meanwhile, the programmer is just kicking a hole in the wall with the frustration of, oh my gosh, that means I'm going to have to change so many things. And then you wonder why programmers are such a happy bunch, right? So the connectivity counts. Make sure you have a detailed diagram, because not only in the field but also the programmer behind the computer should be following that. Your inputs, your outputs to your multi-zone devices, your master controller, IR1, IR2, RS-232, number 3 of the multifunction ports, etc., etc. What are they connected to? And I like to preach the 1 is 1 is 1 rule. What is the 1 is 1 is 1 rule? I made this up. 1 is 1 is 1 means output 1 of your video distribution system, that zone should be output 1 of your audio distribution system. And in your programming, if you have some graphic, that should also be output 1 or zone 1. 1 is 1 is 1. It's going to simplify everything in your programming. As you go through C3, you'll see how the variable like selected zone dictates really everything about the Compass Control project, because its numerical value, 1, 2, 3, that could ultimately be filling the variable, the parameter of your RS-232 or TCP/IP switching command. So 1 is 1 is 1, and that applies to your wiring and your programming. And finally, with your site preparations, the communication, of course, Wi-Fi when you're using your iOS. Now, you want to have a really strong router, okay? So, so there are really professional devices out there. We have partnered with companies like PackEdge and Luxol to ensure that our integrators are aware of very professional enterprise-grade solutions to ensure proper Wi-Fi coverage. There are also other, consumer-grade or available to consumer parts that have very good coverage as well. The Apple Airport Extreme and the Asus Dark Knight router come to mind. Now, those are great if your iPad is going to stay within an area that could be covered by one router. If you move into a multi-level home or commercial facility, then you need to begin looking at using a Wi-Fi repeater system, okay? And that Wi-Fi repeater should be installed strategically so that it's not repeating a weak signal, because what those repeaters receive, if it's only a 2-bar signal, well then now it's broadcasting or it's repeating that 2-bar signal, whereas if you were to install it a little bit closer to that main Wi-Fi router, then it will be able to repeat a 4 or 5-bar signal, not a 2-bar signal. So the Wi-Fi repeater system becomes very important. Now what you should know about Compass, because sometimes people say, well, it's, it just seems like the Compass is killing the bandwidth or something. Well, 100 out of 100 times that has always turned out to be just some other network issues that needed to be ironed out on site. Because Compass uses a very low bandwidth. It is very primitive information, if you will, very minor information that is exchanged. Because again, all of that processing happens in the iPad, and then it's just relaying very small bits of information to the master controller. Now, what could potentially increase that more than I've just described if you have metadata, for example, our partner RustSound, our MCAC5 metadata driver, it actually streams album art into the iPad. Or if you are streaming video, because we do work with a number of streaming IP video devices out there, well, as you know, I am sure that can create a very taxing or a high toll on the network. Finally, the ZigBee, which is what we talk about, the ZRC300. How does that communicate to the MC1000, the ZRC300 via ZigBee, communicating to the ZRX200, the ZigBee receiver, and then a hardwire to the MC1000. Now we advertise for the ZRC300 up to 100 feet through most walls, doors, etc., and floors, I guess, walls, doors, and floors through your installation site. Now, of course, we can't guarantee everything. Brick walls, concrete walls, etc., are going to have a different effect on the system than, you know, standard drywall in a home. Now, that being said, that 100 feet that we advertise is a very conservative number. We've actually got a ZigBee boost system through the ZRC300 with the ZRX200 that we have tested and works 100% reliably in commercial business suites at approximately 200 feet. And when I say approximately, it might even be a little closer to 225 feet, okay? So 100 feet is a conservative number, but ZigBee is a radio frequency, okay? ZigBee is a radio frequency. It is a standard, and that's why we chose ZigBee. But just so you know, some job sites may not be so conducive to ZigBee signals. Now, what if you had a way to locate your ZigBee receive antenna a little closer to where the user is holding that ZRC300 in their hand? You can do that because, again, you can fabricate a cable to connect the ZRX200 to the MC1000. It's a 4-conductor cable, transmit, receive, ground, and power, because that ZigBee receive antenna or transceive antenna is powered via that cable as well. So then you will begin your programming after you make sure you've got all of those bases covered. So we teach you how to program these systems throughout this curriculum, C1, C2, C3. I'm not going to go through and open up the software right now. You'll find more of that even in the very next video, C1 Part 6. However, I'll describe the step-by-step flow. Modular systems, again, you will, a modular system has the events and actions already on the module and already on the button. So if I press the Blu-ray button, it should automatically have on it the macro that is needed so that the TV is on and it's going to switch to its proper input, and then the switcher or AV receiver is on and it selects its proper input so that the Blu-ray player is what you are viewing on the display, right? So what we do, we follow step by step. This is all in the programming step, as you could kind of see on my screen here. The programming tab, it works left to right like reading an English book. I specify English book because we have many international folks viewing this training video. So it reads from left to right. Step number 1, set up controllers. What does that mean? You're going to add your iPad to the system, your ZigBee remote to the system. You're going to add your MC1000 to the system. You're going to perhaps, in that step, if you're using a Lutron or HAI Leviton, you're going to add it in there as well, those automation systems which we enable you to import. The next step is adding modules. So this is the devices that we're controlling, right? The module for the Blu-ray player brings in the graphic, which has the commands on it. Okay, the module for the Lutron system has the graphics with the sliders for lighting levels and thermostat levels, etc. has the bidirectional driver attached to it, which means it comes in with a number of variables as well. Now, if you're doing iOS, then you'll also need to tell us what is the zone in the system. Again, we market this toward a single zone application similar to a home theater, media room, or conference room, like where you have a single display and you have switching on the front end happening just through a single switcher, not like a multi-zone switcher. So you tell us what the zone is, and then you construct that zone. In the media room, the television is connected to the AV receiver via HDMI 1. The AV receiver has cable plugged into the cable SAT input, has the Blu-ray player connected into the BD DVD input, the Apple TV device is connected to the game input, etc., etc., etc. So building that zone construction, connecting to the ports of the devices is what enables us to build, when we skip ahead to compile project, when you compile a project, it automatically creates those selection macros for you based on your zone construction. Controlling flow is when you connect your controllable devices onto a specific port of the MC1000. When I control my television, it's connected to MC1000 port number 1, which is configured as IR. When I control my cable box or my satellite box or my TiVo, it is connected to MC1000 multifunction port number 2, which is configured as IR, or maybe it's connected to via IP, so that port number 2 is still free. Compiling the project, as I skipped ahead a moment ago, is how we automatically place the commands on the necessary buttons to try to keep everything within that 3-button press rule. Preferably 1-button press, right? What is the 3-button press rule? Try to build everything to try to enable the user to do anything they want to do within 3-button presses or less. If you're doing a custom project, we teach you that in C3. And again, you'll want to continue all the way through this in any case, whether you just plan your first system to be modular or custom. I highly recommend you go all the way through C3. Step number 1, setting up the controllers. We talked about that. iPad, Zigbee remote, MC1000, for example, Lutron, HAI Leviton, okay? That's all added in the setup controllers. Adding devices, that's different from adding modules because it doesn't necessarily have to be a module. A module has graphics attached to it as well if it's iOS. Adding devices is just importing the library because you're going to build the graphical look and feel. Controlling flow, once again, if I control my television, it's on this port. If I control my matrix switcher, it's connected to port 6 of the MC1000. And finally, edit system, as you work your way from left to right across the programming tab or programming ribbon, however you wish to call it. Edit system is when you'll now be able to move into the C3 programming methods to build that GUI. So you have that blank iPad to begin with. You build that GUI in the edit system step. So then you have purchasing KeyDigital equipment, perhaps the most important step of them all. You'll just reach out to sales@keydigital.com to determine the best channel for you to acquire our products. Again, that's sales@keydigital.com. I recommend going through the email. Salesmen are often already on the phone and sometimes not able to answer every phone call. That's okay. We will take care of every inquiry that comes in, of course. And you know from the 1X training videos that we have a number of offerings where we'll even build racks and wrap them up and send them your way. We can even sell the programming, etc., etc. So you'll just want to reach out to sales@keydigital.com to get that ball rolling. Very good. So this was just really, again, a step-by-step checklist of, you asking, hey, this is my first job. What do you suggest I do first? You need to decide. on your GUI. Is it going to be a custom GUI or a modular GUI? Custom, it's going to mean you go all the way through C3 for this very first project to learn as much as you can and get your hands really dirty. Modular, we teach you how to program that here in C1, a simplistic single zone type application. Next, confirming creating the control libraries and modules. So you know what you want it to look like. Do we have those control codes for all of the devices you need? If not, refer to the C2 training videos to create your own libraries, or if you want to just edit a module, we'll continue with that here in C1. The site preparations and checklist on the site, all of your connectivity and wiring, is that all laid properly? Are things connected properly? Is the network healthy, or are you dealing with a network where you have one main router, but then you move 50 feet away from it, and it's you know, half the signal strength, half the bandwidth passing, right? Purchasing your KeyDigital equipment, perhaps most important of all, sales at KeyDigital.com. So thanks so much for viewing C1 Part 5, your first Compass Control project. We'll see you next time, C1 Part 6. Thank you.